brief intro. There you go. I'll start again. Say, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you all for taking the time to join. A brief intro. So I've been in sales and sales leadership for 25 years, predominantly in the telecommunication space. The last 10 years, I've worked within the startup ecosystem. In various roles, I've been an angel investor, pitch and sales mentor and coach. I've authored two books, one on mindset for sales for success. And for the last 5 years, my partner and I have been running two agencies supplying virtual assistants to the UK property market, which has been huge fun. During my sales career, I've built sales teams from the ground up. I've built graduate teams. I've inverted underperforming sales teams, and I've helped founders move from founder-led sales to growing a sustainable sales engine. So I kind of have quite a good grounding in how these things work and how to get the most out of situations. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not already connected. And if you have any sort of random questions, you can put them to me here. This is going to be interactive. The more you interact with the session, the more you'll get out of it, especially the fact you'll retain more if you're more active in the exchange. And we are going to have a Q&A at the end. So please do put questions in the chat bar, and I will ask Alejandra or Sophia to keep me honest. If I don't cover them off in the natural flow of this conversation, we can certainly pick those up at the end of the session. So I'm going to spend about 45 minutes. I'm going to walk through the sales landscape for B2B founders who are looking to develop more systemized sales machine, perhaps. And then, as I said, we'll do some Q&A. And broadly speaking, we're going to cover the areas that were communicated to me that are most interesting. And that includes how do I create value? How do I present that value to my clients? I want to dive into why creative and tech founders find themselves a bit resistant to being salespeople or going into sales mode, which is a huge part of the process. And essentially look at the topic of sales through the lens of mindset, message, and method. And we'll go into some of the detail that helps you transition from, I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm throwing everything at the wall, to a more systemized approach, and then start shaving the edges off to make it a more rounded machine. So yeah, I believe I'm just going to take my own view off. It's a bit disconcerting. So I just want gallery. There we go. Show of hands, who's selling at the moment? Actually, their role is sales, or they're involved in sales indirectly. One, two. Is that everybody? Rob, you're not in sales. No? Okay. You're here for the free cookies. No problem.
I will be coming up, so that's
All right. Okay. It's cool. Everybody's welcome. I'm just curious to know whether or not we're all in that sales production mode. Um, who's founder led and who's got a sales team or they're building a sales team?
We are founder-led.
Okay.
I have AI agents. No.
Say again.
I have AI agents. No.
So you've got no sales at all. Okay. Anja, you're
No, forget
obviously
it.
a sales team,
Founder-based,
founder-based
founder-led,
sales.
founder-led. Philip is leading.
And does this mean that you're looking to become more structured and grow a sales team, or am I talking from the perspective of helping founders continue their sales journey, or do they want to transition into building a sales machine? Who wants a sales machine? Show of hands.
Run. Already run, you mean?
Two, right? Okay, three, cool. And everybody else is founder loop. Okay, we can do both. This is super good. Last question. Everybody gets to answer this one. In 5 words or less, what is the one area in your assessment of your sales activity as a company or individually that is actually causing you obstructions to making more sales or reaching your sales targets? So first of all, Guido, what's the one area? The one thing, it could be opening conversations, it could be progressing sales, it could be
Exposure to potential contacts.
okay. So making contact with clients. Ansha.
For me, it's also cold calls and outreach to potential partners and clients.
Perfect, great. Ben?
For me, it's more closing the deal, actually.
Okay, that's a big one. Okay. Marco?
For me is creating leads and contact them automatically.
which I didn't catch that last part. To do what automatically?
Contact them
Contact them
in
automatically.
a
So
auto.
systemization. All right.
Yes, exactly.
Michael?
It's also closing, transforming a client who is interested in a client who signs something.
So I'd call that sales progression. Yeah, moving the conversation along. Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Frinny, are you there?
I think it's about the close to the deal.
Great stuff. That's super helpful. We can lean into all of this in the call, and if we don't, we'll circle back and miss anything specific on the Q&A at the end. Okay, so I'm going to start with an observation that I've made from my experience in startup sales, in corporate sales, etc. And in my estimations, the principles of selling are the same, regardless of whether you're selling door to door, physically knocking on a door, whether you're business to business, business to consumer, or business to consumer. It doesn't matter in what form the interaction takes. The principles are you're matching someone with something they want or need. And that really is that is so simple, and yet it's so fundamentally missed so much of the time. You've got to match what people want and need. And matching is an expression of for understanding what makes the customer tick and then matching that component to them. So it's all the same idea, at least that's the idea. And we're all B2B here, I'm guessing. No one's B2C. You're B2C as well. You're B2C.
I might be doing both in the future.
You might be doing both. Well, we'll stick with the idea of B2B. Okay. In an ideal world, a startup founder identifies a niche. It's an opportunity in a market with a substantial size of opportunity, i.e. there's some capacity for growth, especially if you're looking to attract funding. And they're actively seeking to build a solution to the challenge they face in that. And they recognize and have identified that the marketplace that they're looking to sell into are actually prepared to pay for that solution. So that when you have a founder that has that perception and combines that with their situation, perhaps they've come out of an industry that's given them a unique perspective, their experience and timing allows them to take advantage of that opportunity. That's how it should work. However, what is more common is that people decide they want to build a business because some technology has arrived on the scene that suddenly facilitates certain things to be done quicker, easier, or more straightforward. And they go, well, actually, this is a great idea. I can leverage this technology. I can build a business. I can deliver this. And that isn't necessarily the best way to go about a business because you're starting with a solution and not a problem. This is just for context. You already know this, I hope, because you're already where you are. But there is, the challenge of that reality, which is if you are trying to sell something that isn't in an environment that they're actually demanding, or you haven't measured the demand as accurately as you should have, it becomes difficult to sell. But the additional dimension to this is the mindset dimension that people very rarely take into consideration. It's who here is comfortable with sales activity and selling? Show of hands. Put your hands up. Who enjoys it actively? 1, 2, 3 people. Okay, so the idea is that if you're doing something that at some level you don't enjoy, you're going to create an internal resistance to. And in sales, it's a little bit more pronounced because we build ideas in our mind about things, and yet we're often unaware or oblivious to the ideas that we have. This we call unconsciousness in terms of the cognitive functions that go on. So the way this is that if you have something negative towards the idea of selling or salespeople, your ego, because everybody has an ego, your ego is not going to allow you to become that thing it judges. It'll just create unconscious resistance in the form of procrastination, in the form of difficulty, in the form of looking for other things to do. So if you're not actually aware that there's things that you dislike about it and you bring it into the light, they will go on as unconscious assumptions about what you do. And when you consider that what we call executive consciousness, that part of us that's awake and alert and making decisions and speaking, accounts for about 5% of our overall cognitive function. There's a lot of under the hood thinking. So your mindset is really quite fundamental, because everything in life that you do and everything in life that you experience is filtered through a perception filter that is built up of your ideas and thoughts and past experiences, all of which are completely invisible. So it's not that you see and interact with the event, it's you interact with the idea about what you see. And that changes everything. So I just want to I'm not going to dwell on this because this isn't the body of it, but I want to put some light on it because it is important. Quick, I want you to type in the text the answer to this question, right? So it's a little sort of self-inquiry. When you hear the word salesperson, what's the very first image or feeling that appears? Don't dwell on it, just type the first thing that comes in your head. It's either positive or negative, but it's going to be something. And think about this. Have you ever dealt with a salesperson that has ever made you feel or recognize that feeling you've just written down? Have you ever seen that personified in somebody? Smeary? I don't even know what smeary is, but it doesn't sound good. Let's see if I can open that box up somewhere else. Yeah, great stuff. Car. You've lost me there, Guido. Pushy, definitely. Oh, dealing with people annoying.
Car salesman.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so have you encountered these people? Yeah. If you have, that's why. If you have that sort of presumption about people, you're never going to really want to embody those things. Um, Now, what happens if you have that feeling? What happens if someone mistakenly says you're a salesperson? How does that make you feel? If someone thought you were a salesperson, would you need to defend yourself, correct them, rename yourself? Put a comment in the box. I just want to see some of the language you guys are using. Awkward, no, I'm having. Okay. You didn't get the question. The question was essentially, have you ever encountered a salesperson that made you feel or you recognize that quality about the idea of being a salesperson? So people have said, when you hear the word salesperson, sleazy comes to mind, awkward, needy. Have you ever seen that, encountered that in a salesperson, was the question. Yeah, good. So now I want you to complete this sentence. Salespeople are ... Whatever the next word is, or 2 words or 3 words is, just type that out. What we're doing is we're bringing out into the light these things that you may think you've been unconscious of, but essentially they are still forming unconscious feelings that you have. A special type of humans. Yeah, that's fair enough. So one of the key things here is this window actually. One of the key things here is we need to recontextualize how we feel about it, because if your perception is selling is somehow these things that are described and potentially a myriad of more, then maybe your relationship with what you're thinking is open to be recontextualized in the way that what you're doing is solving problems. You're helping people. So from that perspective, have you ever bought something that's been so beneficial to you that the process of buying it involved a salesperson, and that you were really grateful that they helped you, guide you through the process, and you were really happy with that purchase? Has anybody ever bought anything they really, really loved buying and the whole process was enjoyable? Good. Yeah, good. So you can see that done in the right way, sales can be really powerfully enabling because you've come away from an experience where you've actually given them money for something and you come away feeling happy. That's the gold standard that we want to get for you and your clients as well. We want them to enjoy interacting with you. When I wrote The Conscious Sale, which is essentially a mindset sort of guide to success in sales, one of the things I recognized from the research I did was that most people in the buying situation didn't enjoy buying because salespeople had this attitude of trying to get from them. They always thought they were being sold to, and so they were always very guarded. But in those instances where salespeople showed up with the interests of the buyer in mind, transformed the way that the sale went. Anyway, I'm not going to go into this any further. I just wanted to make you aware that how you think about this is going to have an impact on the results you get. If you're interested in understanding more, I cover this in depth in the Conscious Sale. You can find it on Amazon. Shameless plug. Okay, so that's useful data for you, and I want you to consider it. So let's go on to what we really want to get to is the perception of value in a buying situation. So when Caltech first approached me about this, they said, this is a question that keeps coming up. How do I project or create value for the client? And this is a great starting point because your ability to answer this question will illuminate any potential gaps in your awareness, in your knowledge, or your offering. So let's start with this. To your prospects, value is at best a perception and then only experienced once they bought into it. Let that sink in. It's at best, it exists only as perception until it's realized. And it's not always a given that the value that you believe you represent is realized by the other party. Because quite often when you go into a sales situation, you're trying to sell something rather than understand a problem to solve. Two very different things. So I'm going to use some short form language. IC, everybody familiar with IC? Ideal client, yeah? Just nod, yeah, good. VP, value proposition, yeah, value proposition. Everyone got that? Yeah, good. Okay, so when engaging with your IC, you're going to have to adequately project a value proposition, a VP, that the IC can conceptually see how it benefits them and sees the value, albeit conceptually, and then understanding why your customers buy from you becomes an essential component. Because if you don't know why they want to buy your product, you don't know how to present it in an opening situation. So if you're struggling to open conversations, it may well be that it's just you're not so clear on why they would buy it in the first place. Now, you're all quite mature. You're all in sales mode, I'm guessing. So you're all post MVP. And you will have hopefully gone through a decent validation process. And this is honestly where most founders I've worked with in other places have tripped up because they believe magically because of their situation experience and their knowledge of technology and their timing, and they magically know that there's a market and that market's going to buy this product. So the question is, amongst all of you here, how many of you know categorically, with certainty, what makes your offering desirable to your customer base? Show of hands. Okay, Guido. Ben, excellent. So if I was to ask each of you guys, if I was to ask 100 of your ideal client personas, what the principal reason or the top 3 reasons they would buy your product, if I asked 100 of them, are you certain that 80 of them would write down the same 3 things that you would? You can come off mic, guys. Listen, I don't mind a bit of two-way action. It'll save my voice a bit as well. Guido, are you confident if I asked 100 people at your ideal client, 80 of them are going to give me the same answer that you'd give me?
Yeah, I think so, more or less.
No. You said you were certain at the beginning, and now you think so. It's more or less.
I think, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm picking on you, but this is my point. The only way you can truly understand is if you ask them. And which is why the validation process is super important. Because when you do validation, you're asking a statistically relevant number of people about your product, what they like, what they dislike, what shines the most. Because if out of the founders in the room here this evening, you've all probably been in your business longer than 12 months. In a light trade, it could be even 2 or 3 years. And if that's the case, you will have started to make assumptions about what is obvious, what is the key features, and why people like it. And unless you keep checking in with that customer base to make sure that assumption is actually correct, you will end up believing that the people buying your product are completely different to the people who are actually potentially buying your product. So the best way is to poll them. Ask 100 people a simple series of questions, 3 questions, in fact. Well, it's actually 1 question in 3 parts. It's what 3 things? Is anybody familiar with what 3 things? This is one of the most powerful questions given to me by my mentor, and it is appropriate for your customers, it's appropriate for your senior team, it's appropriate for your wider team. And it's essentially a way of checking alignment. So you go to, you ask your prospective customer, what 3 things stands out the most, benefits the most, attracted you the most, take your pick, about our product. That's it. Make it super easy, those 3 things. And then you've got a standardized question that you can then check the answers for. And then you're looking for statistical patterns. I would be very interested to see how close you all are from your assessment, i.e. your pre-question assessment in terms of this is why people buy from us versus the results that you get. And this is a super powerful exercise also for your team. So especially when there's more than one founder in the business. I've done this a couple of times and it's quite stark in terms of the differential. So you have 2 founders, 3 founders, or a senior management team if you're slightly bigger in organization. And you say, okay, what are the 3 main priorities for this business in the order of priority? Each of you write that down, 1, 2, 3. How many of them typically get the first one right? Maybe 50%, 60%, but invariably they're looking through the lens of their own situation and not as a company. So if you want to check how we're aligned, because sales is all about alignment, ask that question. Language is a super important one as well. I think
I'm sorry to
Taran,
interrupt. I
Go
see
for
a
it.
couple of hands up. I'm not sure whether they want to ask you something or.
I didn't
yes,
see it, but yeah, I know I've got some.
yes. It's better if we turn on the mic when we want because
Yeah, just speak up,
obviously,
please.
yes, yep.
Super.
So my question is, you mentioned 100 customers or potential customers for validation, but is this the minimum number or there is a more limited number that is sufficient in your opinion to achieve the goal?
The greater the number, the more statistically relevant the answer that you can derive from it. So if you want to have a 99.9% certainty that you're correct in your understanding, ask a bigger subset of your market. If you're okay with the potential for it being different, a smaller subset. I always put it the way that if you're at the validation stage, you don't do 100 people because why would you commit yourself to years of effort and time and money in a business, and you'd have to be really certain that it's going to work, so you'd want to ask a higher number. It takes time, but in the asking, and this is the beauty of this approach, you could even use this as your sales outreach, and we can go into that elsewhere a bit further on. But the question is, how comfortable are you being partially clear or fully clear? Because what you're going to do is take this information and then you're going to turn that into your value proposition. You're going to turn that into your micro script to use to open up the conversations when you do your cold calling or your outreach. So the closer you are to 100% accuracy, the more likely it's going to land every time you use it. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
So yeah, ask your team, ask your clients, check in with your colleagues to make sure you're aligned on this. And then once you've got that insight, you can then compare it to your value proposition that you've already built, because you will have all built a value proposition for the product or the offering that you have. And so the value, and listen, teaching you to suck eggs, you probably all know this, but the key components of the value proposition, whether it's delivered as an elevator pitch in 30 seconds, or you're given more license to speak and you can speak for 20, 30 minutes, it's essentially communicating to the client very briefly who you are, what you do, because that's not really why you're there. It's about what you can do for them, how you can do it, and the good outcome they can expect from it. Because shock horror, everybody, nobody really gives a stuff about your offering. What they give a stuff about is what the offering will do for them. It's the outcome that people buy rather than the solution, if that makes sense. So in a business situation, you're either in growth mode or you're in pain. Yeah. Something's stopping you from growing, or you're trying to grow faster than you currently are. Those are good motivators to fix a problem. If you're on what we call even keel, there's no impetus to change what you're doing, and it's a harder sell environment. But you really you've got to take it from that tangent.
But Taran, maybe I ask a question. So my issue here is I totally agree with ask 100 people, but I think that's very easy or quite easy in a B2C model. But in a B2B model, when my counterparts and potential clients are bigger companies, how can I approach 100 companies to ask them whatever question? So if I manage to get a meeting with them at all, then there is a certain expectation on their side and also pressure on my side that I already come with some kind of value into the meeting, and it will not work typically if I say, I'm the cool startup, I just want to talk about your problems. Yeah. So maybe that's not the phrasing, but I have a big issue in getting these meetings without a concrete offering, but just in a validation phase.
So would you agree that in the industry that you're selling into, there are different size opportunities, different size companies that you could sell into, or are you just selling into one type of company structure?
No, definitely different sizes. Yeah.
So what we typically do in this situation when you're doing this validation phase, and what we'll do is we'll turn this into a sales outreach, is we'll go to some of the smaller tier companies than you actually want to sell into, as long as the mechanics are similar in terms of the benefits that they will derive from it. Because if a smaller company, you go direct to a founder, you're more likely to get courtesy in listening to you. You turn that into, I want to interview you. I'm doing some market research. I'm doing a sanity check. I'm not selling anything to anybody at this stage. All I want to do is I just want to check in with you to ensure that my assumptions about your circumstances are correct. Now, what we're not doing is saying, can you validate my business for me? What we're doing is we're translating that into, I have an understanding about how we interact with your company or your industry. And I'm pretty certain I'm 100% accurate. But I would really appreciate your insight as a leader in this company or a leader in this industry, and just sanity check. It'll take 2 minutes, 3 minutes to answer the question. And that typically works on smaller companies. Now, I don't know what size of companies you're trying to sell into or what level you're trying to sell into. But the point is, if you started a business, you would have probably carried out some of this validation in the first place. So you're building on what you already know. If you haven't done that, then we can take this conversation, put it sidebar, and we can work out a strategy to apply that in your situation. But typically, you want to present to the customer or the prospect, you're not asking for anything beyond adding value to their day. So in cold outreach, it's always sharing an insight that people don't have. What typically happens in cold outreach is, can I have your time? Can I have something from you? Can you give me this? So we have to find a way of getting that by first giving them something that's valuable to them, which may be your market insight that they don't have based on your position in the business, your understanding of the long-term impacts in the marketplace. There's always a way of spinning the script, as it were, in order to create engagement. But it's not easy. You have to do the work, and I'm just saying that's one of the best ways to understand what needs to go into the value proposition, because once you understand that, you'll find that the gap between perception and value, circling it back to what we were talking about, starts to close, because now we know that what you're talking about is a value resonator in their mind, because they've already communicated, or their industry largely has communicated, this is what represents value. This is what would attract us to the conversation. So it's important. Again, so why else is this important in terms of the value proposition and understanding what motivates people to buy? Well, this may resonate with some of you. Low ideal client engagement, meaning it's difficult to open sales conversations. And this is very often because it's either your value proposition is unclear to the audience, or it's even wrong or mismatched as a client profile, as in inside the company, or it could be even the wrong kind of company in the first place. So when we drill into the value proposition and the ideal client match, that tends to remove a lot of the friction that comes from low engagement. Sales conversations become price driven before the conversation is actually unfolded. Anyone ever get that? People just want to know how much it is before they take the conversation any further. Unclear or inaccurate value proposition. Prospects don't see what you see. So when you're speaking to them, you're talking about a solution that might be complicated or complex. They see a commodity turnkey solution. And so commoditized products are cheap. So it's about creating the right perception in their mind. And in order to do that, you have to have the right value proposition. Sales are dragging on without clear sight of the finish line and frequently fizzle out before they close. Hands up, everyone who's been in a sales conversation that starts really positive and then it just starts to lose momentum, and then eventually they stop replying. Yeah. It's painful. It's so painful. Not understanding the motivations of the client fully, an unclear sales process and timing, both sales. There's two sales cycles going on, by the way. Well, one sales cycle, one buying cycle. Your sales cycle and their buying cycle don't necessarily overlap cleanly. So part of the process of discovery and qualification is understanding where they are in that process versus where you want them to be. So speaking to the wrong people, having the wrong conversation with the ideal client. So how could you have the wrong conversation? Well, if you're selling into a larger organization, there's a chance that you might end up engaging with more than one person. You could go in at the ground level, the quote unquote worker level, doing the work, the managerial level, presiding over that team, department head, etc. Then you've got the chief exec, chief operator, or chief finance officer, or as we used to call it, managing directors, etc. Each one of those people will have a very different conversation about the same thing. Yeah. So make sure that you match the conversation and the proposition that you open with the audience's purview. What's important to them? Because talking to the chief executive or the finance director about the nuts and bolts of your business is a mismatch, because by definition they're dealing with the presiding over a large organization and they delegate that stuff out. So you have to have a much more holistic and conceptual conversation that leads into the things that they're interested in, which is like the future trends of the industry, potential road blockages, unseen competition, potential leverage from other areas that might change their position. So you need to make sure that the language you're using and the conversation you're having matches the audience you're talking to. 4, hard to accurately create sales forecasts for investors or senior management. As a business, we need to forecast what's going to close. How many of you are involved in any kind of forecasting? Okay, a couple of you. Okay, so are you running on a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day forecast? Or longer?
All three.
Michael?
2 to 3 quarters, but
2 to 3 quarters.
detailed for the current quarter and roughly for the next other 2 quarters, maybe something like that. It's typical for me.
How accurate are your forecasts?
Not at all.
Honesty. Good. Guido?
They are okay. So they're
Okay.
not super accurate and they're not super inaccurate.
Could you go to an investor with them and give a good account and say, this is what's going to come in next quarter?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, you're in good shape, reasonably good shape then. So look, with forecasting, it's a reflection of a more fundamental part of the business because it's how we report on the activity we do that populates the forecast that can go in and be measured accurately. We'll go into that in a bit. And then 5, you meet with a prospect, deliver a proposal, and then you get ghosted. Yeah, you have a really great meeting and everybody's like, yeah, this is super exciting. Oh, we'll get these people involved. And you leave on a high, and then a week passes and you haven't heard anything. Second week passes and you sort of, well, maybe I put a phone call in, maybe I put an email in, and then nothing, and it fizzles out. How many people have experienced that? Yeah. And I'm not talking about dating. It's just business, right? Um, how many of you have given your prospect the permission to say no up front? So there's this
Sorry,
thing.
Darren, I didn't get that.
What do you mean give him the permission?
So what I say, Guido, is have you given your prospective client the permission to tell you, thanks, not interested, thanks, not now, thanks, no, thank you?
Is it a suggestion to do it explicitly?
Yeah, fine, yeah, absolutely. Look, the thing is, people don't like saying no to people. It's a weird thing, actually. They would rather just not talk to you if you're, especially if you're only on an email. They just maybe if I ignore you long enough, you'll go away, right? Whereas really, you're okay with being told no because you're all grown ups with your big people's boots on, and you're like, just tell me where we're at, and then I can stop bothering you and move on to someone that I can help. So the idea of the upfront contract, it was shared to me by a sales guy, a sales mentor, sales coach about 10 years ago. And it says something along the lines of, thanks for taking this call. Thanks for taking this meeting. If it's okay with you, I would share with you a little bit about my expectations for the meeting. I hope they align with yours. I want to understand about your business. I'm going to share a little bit what we do in order to help you affect that outcome. But I'd like to ask something in the beginning, which is, if this doesn't work for you, if after the conversation you feel that this is in the wrong direction, this is the wrong time, or it's just actually a complete mismatch, just please tell me, no, this is not it. Can we agree that that way we can either agree to move forward and we'll move to the next step and we'll do the same thing at the next step? If it makes sense to continue, we'll go forward. And at any stage you think it doesn't, you could just say no. Most people, when they're given that permission, will actually use that. And then you will get the opportunity to check in at every stage of the opportunity that you're working through, because it's an opportunity until it closes, and keep you honest about what is right for them. What is keeping them interested? And if they say, actually, at this stage, no, suddenly this isn't right. So, okay, that's fine. I appreciate that. What exactly? Can you give me some insights so I know for the next time I talk to somebody that I don't either repeat the problem, or maybe it's something we can fix now if it's just a misperception. But this way, it's a continuous qualification of the opportunity. And it means that when you do get a no, you're zeroing in on the part that is potentially problematic in the sale. Because it's very unlikely that there's a complete mismatch because they took the call in the first place. And it could be oh, I was curious about this thing, but I thought it was something else. Okay, I need to be clear on my value proposition. Oh, when we got to the pricing, your pricing was completely out of whack with the size of the problem. The problem is not that big that we need to spend that much money. Oh, okay, I've got a price problem. You start to be able to drill down into the mechanics of why people say no as much as yes. And that's equally as valuable. So the upfront contract is so powerful to remove the ghosting dimension, because you're saying, look, we're all grown-ups. I've got thick skin. You can just tell me no. Right. So awareness of yourself, awareness of the customer, engagement, right? So cold outreach, we've got this opportunity to cold call, text message, platform message on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever your medium is. How many of you are doing phone calls? Excellent. Excellent. How many are doing messaging? Is the reason for messaging because nobody answers the phone or you don't like phone calls?
I typically don't have the phone numbers at the beginning. So maybe if I have some relationship, then definitely phone call and messages. But for the first outreach, I typically do not have any phone numbers or messaging IDs.
What kind of business are you selling into?
Into the artist management galleries, and but also into um, brands like.
Okay, Michael. So these businesses have online presences. You pick up you look at you look at the website, you pick the number up, you say, hey, can I speak to this department, the VA or the PA or whoever of this person, or if that doesn't work, you phone the sales line. That's the one line guaranteed to be answered every time you call it when you dial into a company, because salespeople are hungry sharks and the phone rings, they're going to answer it. So you use the opportunity you have and you build a way through. If you haven't got the phone number, you kind of can find it. If it's that lengthy a process, then there's other ways and means around doing it yourself. But if you had the telephone number, Michael, would you make the phone call?
Yes.
Good. And for those of you that are also making phone calls, Anja, Rob, how do you find the phone call? What do you open with? Maybe one at a time. Anja, what do you open with on the phone call?
It depends. Usually I ask them if they have a minute, if I can steal a minute of their time, if it's convenient now, or if I can call back later because I might need some minutes of their time.
Permission based, okay? Not the best approach because you've immediately said you're more important than me.
Mm.
Can I have some time rather than I've got something that's going to maybe transform your business? It's actually in your interest to listen to me. That's the ego bit, but I wouldn't say that. But that's the energy you really need to come from. You're an equal, so don't ask permission. Rob, when you open a phone call, how do you open it?
I didn't mean to give the impression that I was, maybe I put up my hand, but I didn't mean to give the impression I was doing it.
Wait, no worries. Who
But
else
I
is
love the idea. It would never even occur to me to use the phone. And so
the weird thing is, I grew up on the phones in terms of my sales career started as telephone sales. Well, I actually started door-to-door selling internet connectivity, but I went on to telephone sales. Um, there's a lot of discomfort about speaking on the phone now. And there's also the added disadvantage that a lot of people work from home, so they're only on their mobile. So the landline doesn't always work. So it is more hit and miss now. But the difference is when you get someone on the phone, you've got a much stronger opportunity to sell them the idea of a half an hour conversation than if you just send them an email that they can delete without opening. Yeah. So when you start with cold calling, you have to be clear that really what you're trying to do, if you want to call it a sale, it's a mini sale, you've got to sell the idea that it's in their interest to have a longer conversation with you. So that doesn't mean you launch into a pitch about your offering. You sell the value of a conversation. Now, why would somebody listen to you? Well, if you could identify or if you could display and cement in their perception that you have authority and knowledge about an environment they are invested in, they might listen to you. So if you can ask a question, not as in give me something, your time, your money, but if you can ask a question that makes them think a little bit broader than maybe most salespeople that contact them with the same offering would do, you have something that's more likely to resonate with them. So, hey, Anja, thanks for answering the phone. Listen, 30 seconds. I know you're working in this space. I wondered if you considered the consequences of participant X coming into the place in the next 6 months and eating everybody's lunch. Have you got a defense plan in place to protect your revenues? It's like, excuse me, who are you? The fact is, they're not saying go away. This is a sales call. They're like, who are you? And oh, then you can start opening the question. But the thing is, the principal challenge is to what we call pattern interrupt. Yeah. So when the phone rings and you say, "Oh, hi there," and they say, "Hey, hi, I'm calling from blah, blah, blah." It's like, "Oh, it's a salesperson." You change energy, you go into this closed down state. I don't want to talk to a salesperson. I'm busy. Put the phone down. So we have to disrupt their pattern recognition part of their brain that looks out for that salesperson call subconsciously, and you throw something curveball at them. So you ask them something about their business or their situation that stops them and makes them think. It doesn't matter if they push back, but you get them instantly go, "Well, who are you? Why are you calling me?" We work with people like you, actually. I'm curious to know, though, we provide solutions in this area. Have you got something in place? Ask the question again. The reason I'm actually calling is I'd love to spend 25 minutes with you, but I just wanted to check in with you first to make sure that it was of interest to you. The more you do cold calling, the more refined you'll get. And if you do 100 calls a day, 200 calls a day, you'll get to the point where you become quite comfortable with this. But it's not just as simple as having gift of the gab. You need to have like a set of all the potential pushbacks they're going to come back with. And then you can pre-prepare stock responses. It's not about parrot fashioning responses, but it's not getting stumped on the call. It's about challenging a little bit their current thinking. Because one of the things that salespeople typically don't do anymore is challenge people. They say, "Would you like to buy something?" "No." "Okay, thanks very much." It's like, challenge the thinking behind the decision. There's a number of disciplines called in sales. There's challenger sales, there's gap selling, there's Miller Hyman, there's spin selling. I've taken a blend of all of these because they all have explicit parts that actually bed together quite nicely to bring about that outcome. But challenging is very uncomfortable for people, so they don't do it. But you tend to respect people more that push back a little bit and ask you questions and make you think. The trick is to have no energy behind it, no energy, no ego behind it. Be completely neutral and come from that place of curiosity. So once you've got, let's say you've been successful, you've got that first discovery call meeting, whether it's on a Zoom, whether it's in person. It's really important that you know what you want from that meeting. Okay, because if you don't know what good looks like as an outcome, it's hard to navigate to it. So in each of your sales situations, ask yourself, what would be the optimum, the best outcome of a discovery call and qualification call with the prospect? And list all those things. Once you have an understanding about what you need to get to in that conversation, you can start back engineering it. Well, if I want to understand about their business outside of what we're selling, I need to ask certain questions. Okay, what kind of questions do I need to ask? Well, there's a myriad questions actually that probably have no relationship to your offering, but would be very important and impactful on the sales process that you're in. So like questions like, do you already use an offering like this? If they do, how's it working for them? Would you like anything? Would you like to see anything more that isn't there currently? Who's currently delivering it and for how long? Is there a long-term contract in place? We're looking for situational questions. If they don't use something like yours, what have they been doing? How do they change their sort of strategic approach to whatever it is that you're trying to position? How does the use of this product or service impact their business? Who does it impact in the business? Who else is involved in the buying process? When does that buying process take place? These are all situational questions, and there's a lot more as well, that will allow you to qualify whether or not you're at the right point in time to take an opportunity forward. One of the things that often happens is that you make a phone call, someone says, "Yeah, I'll speak to you." And so, yeah, we're in a 5-year contract. We've signed 2 years ago. We've got another 3 years in. You've got an option then. You can just keep in touch and hope that it changes. You can do some groundwork, try and build some relationships. But by and large, it's not a great situation time-wise. But if you didn't ask that question, you wouldn't know that, and you wouldn't know that your time is better spent elsewhere. So building a qualification set of questions that are situational to the business that you're trying to sell and situational to the company you're selling into. that will help you navigate the sales process a lot more efficiently, and that will influence how much time and energy you invest in each and every sale. The discovery and qualification is exactly that. You come in it with a curiosity about their business. Try not to have conversations that are firing questions, and have a commercial conversation and try and weave in the questions to that. And then ask them at the end of the meeting if you can ask some more broader questions about the company, so you get a better understanding. And the key here for me when I was in telecoms and when I was running teams is we're trying to find another person in the company to speak to. Not as I want to go higher, but you want to speak to as many people to get as many perceptions and many ideas and many sort of angles to understand where everything works. Because the more people you have an engagement with, the more likely it is you can validate what people tell you. And it's never been the first case where someone's been dealing with a salesperson and then they suddenly leave the company and the salesperson's, oh yeah, this deal's coming in next quarter, and the person they've been dealing with has moved on, didn't have the courtesy to tell them, and you're standing there going, oh crap. So you're building out an understanding of the sphere of influence in the organization from the decision making. So who makes the decisions? Typically, big purchases aren't made by one person anymore. There's kind of a collaborative approach to buying. So you've got your sales service that you're trying to map out. So this step leads to this step leads to this step. We call that the sales cycle. They will have the opposite buying cycle. So you'll understand when their financial year is, when their budgets are set, whether or not there is any budget remaining for other things, whether or not they can always put in a request for more funds if it makes commercial sense to do so. You want to understand the frequency that the buying team gets together, whether or not the permission to explore other ideas has to go above their department or it goes to another building or another part of the company. You're trying to map out what the buying process is, because if you don't understand that, you might think that you're at the point where your sales are going to close and they're still thinking, well, I haven't told my boss that I'm exploring this yet. And until I get their buy-in, I can't progress it anyway. So navigating the waters beyond just the sale of your service is super important when you're dealing with larger companies. So map out your sales cycle every step of the way from the first contact to you delivering whatever it is you're selling. So you're trying to be able to say, if I know these steps, I know what has to happen in each one of these for me to feel comfortable that we can move to the next one. And then the idea is you map that to their buying cycle. And invariably, they never line up, but you do your best to navigate those differences. Am I speaking too quickly? No, we're all good? All right, cool. How are we doing for time? Was there a question? Cool. So if you've got this sense of the buying journey, you can then map your point in that journey, in that sales cycle, and you can use that to build your sales forecast. So a forecast for an opportunity, typically measured in percentage points, 10% to 100%. 10%, I've got a barely qualified opportunity. They meet the minimum standards of qualification. The company exists in the right geography. Okay. The company exists in the right geography. They're the right kind of business, and I'm speaking to the right kind of person. That kind of says it's worth investing more time in. Once you've actually spoken to them and you've qualified that there is something to explore further, that they are the right person, there is a potential need or use for the service you're offering, you then mark that at 20%. And then you work out that each increment up to 100% reflects a stage in your sales journey. It may not be 10 stages, it may be 5, it may be 15. It depends on what you're doing. But you need to know that so that when you put that opportunity in the forecast, you could say, yeah, that opportunity is at 10%, but I've got one at 90% that's ready to close, or I've got one at 60% that we're exchanging contracts, or I've got we're at 40% and we're doing a technical build. So that anybody that picks up the sales forecast who has a key and understanding of what each stage in the pipeline means they know exactly how far or how close you are to moving that sales forward, and they know what you've completed, what you understand about that company and that customer. Because what we're trying to do is create repeatable sales processes. So if you have a standardized way of measuring opportunity progression, everybody speaks the same language internally, then it's easier for everybody to work together in terms of communicating up in the business. So you have that pipeline being built out. The activity you do today is activity that's likely to bear fruit in 6 months' time, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. So what that means is you have to make the sales activity a daily component. And if you have salespeople, great. Have some people doing the discovery part where they're looking to identify potential clients. We call them SDRs, sales development representatives. And then you have what you call the AE, who might be then taking on the discovery call onwards, and they're starting to engage with the client. Then perhaps you have someone more senior going in and actually doing the relationship to relationship close, where you're presenting someone of an equal stature in order to have that conversation to get the deal across the line. I think a couple of you said that you're struggling to close the deals. What's coming up for you guys when you're getting stuck and that you can't tip it over the edge? What's the pushback or what's happening for you? Michael.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. So maybe one issue with my product is that it is a bit complicated and that it needs some kind of customization quite often. And my customers, my clients in the first meeting, they get the overall picture and the overall idea, but then it gets a bit complicated how to apply it exactly in their situation. And that's typical a problem with me on my side. And that tells me I need to think a bit more about standardizing my product. But that's a big issue why it sometimes does not progress or close too much.
Do they give you feedback or is it just withering and dying? Do they say it's too complicated? Do they say they don't see the value? What are they actually saying to you?
Well, it's typically ghosting. It's they say, we will think about, yeah, we'll think about it and let's talk again in 2 weeks or whatever, and we need to do this. And then I chase them, and I do not get well, second meeting sometimes, but third meeting, then typically it's over.
Are you comfortable in sharing with us all a 30-second value proposition of your business? In 30 seconds or less, what you offer your client as a value proposition?
Well, I'm offering basically to increase their revenue. I increase their revenue by applying special technologies that helps them to enrich their product and to give digital experiences to physical products, and to add some trust components like security and so on. And this makes their products more valuable and easier to sell. And that should increase their revenue. That's what I think basically is the value proposition for most of my clients.
There's an opportunity to improve upon that dramatically. It does what everybody's product does. Oh, we'll make you more money. Okay, that doesn't communicate the perception of value. It doesn't show that you have a unique insight into their industry. So, there's a conversation on the side there about refining that a little bit. Somebody else. Who else was having trouble closing deals? Ben?
Yes, problem is I have to go. That's why I'm hesitating.
Oh, okay, well, if you have to go, buddy, you have to go. No problem.
But the question was more like the details, like you found a common agreement that you actually want to work together, and then it's about the, nicky little stuff that you put down in the contract. And that's always the moment where I get the most, how to say that in English, like swimmy.
Pushback?
Not pushbacks, but it's just like so unclear what the details will be. And then it gets complicated.
This is true. Without deeper knowledge of exactly your business offering and who you're selling into, it's hard to comment on that. But I mean, we used to sell in telecoms, we used to deliver global networks to banks and large corporations, and some of the deals went on for a year, 2 years, and there was a lot of toing and froing with the lawyers and the contract detail. But the key part before you get to that detail in the contract is getting that visible buy-in that this on paper, contracts aside, makes clear sense. Because what you're really looking for is you're looking for them to come to the table with the intention of finding common ground. So that because they believe that there's value in the product for them, it's in their interest to find a way through that. And then it's about bringing in systemization, or even if you're dealing with lawyers and you aren't legally trained, then it's a question of whether or not you need to change the skill set that you're using in that situation in order to make more progress. Again, more than happy to have a sort of a side conversation and go a little bit deeper into specifics, and potentially identify how you might resolve some of that challenge. But invariably, bigger companies will try and leverage their size and push their contract terms on you. That's happened loads of times when we've dealt with banks, and it's like, actually, it's our service, it's our contract. But it's recognizing what you represent to them and being comfortable in standing your ground. It's quite easy to just to capitulate and say, yes, I'll give you everything you want because I just really need to make the sale, or I really want to make the business. Um, and that isn't always doing you justice. So it's understanding what's happening in that sales process. I know we've gone over a little bit. Do we have any questions at the moment? I'm happy to stay here for a little bit longer. No worries. Cheers, Ben. Anybody else have a question?
I have a question. If you can make a brief list of what are the best tool that you, for a small company, a startup, and so on, that you can use to help you on the whole process. I mean, obviously, everything is in your mind, in your experience, and so on. But which are the basic tools that you use to help you to follow the process from the very start to the end?
For a free tool, I'd say use Asana. You know Asana?
No.
Everyone know Asana? Anyone else know Asana? It's great, right? You can use it as a workflow mechanism. You can use it for sales pipeline. It's got a lot of different functionality, and there's a great free version. Okay. So that would be, if you don't have any sort of digital systems, you can do a lot with that for no money. It just takes time to build the system, and it's not complicated. You can go on YouTube and watch a few tutorials on how to use it, and you'll be up and running in an hour.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anja, what brought you here today in terms of what specifics were you interested again?
Actually, I was just here for inspiration,
Okay.
because I reach out to potential institutional partners that give us access to the actual clients we want to reach. So I'm contacting potential multipliers to reach our customers. And sometimes it's more difficult than I thought.
You present that as a win-win-win situation where your win is their win, and
Yes, exactly, because the moment they help, so what I usually try to do is make them aware that the moment they help us get our information to the students, our potential clients, they are not just helping us, but they are helping the students, and this is what they are there for at the universities. So yeah.
who are you engaging with? What's the role of the person is that student admissions, or who are you talking to there?
It's coordinators. It's sometimes the speaker persons of the study group. Usually, when we go with orchestra academies, it's the coordinators and the speaker of the academy.
And do you find that the openness and their willingness to work with you fluctuates depending on whatever, depending on the day of the week, depending how they feel? Are they consistent in the way they work with you or treat you?
I think it's much easier with the orchestra academies than with the universities, because the orchestra academies are much closer to the students and to the musicians than the universities and the spokespersons of the universities. So it's just it's more obstacles with the universities than with the academies.
Do you ever talk to the lecturers?
No, I didn't.
Looking at the route to the market may not always be A to B, it could be A to C to B. So if you can get enough people talking about you internally in that organization that even sponsor what you're trying to accomplish, it may shift the balance of perception as to whether or not they should talk to you. So it might be easier to go and talk to a dozen lecturers in a university and sell the idea that you're helping them indirectly by delivering this service, and that they can you're almost looking for a sponsor or a buddy to kind of give you a big up internally. So they're going to be a lot more open because you're not actually trying to sell anything to them. So what you need to do is try and find a way of creating some perception of value. It's indirect, but us working with the university helps you accomplish this because this is what we do. These are the obstacles we take out. These are the benefits we deliver. I wanted to make you aware that we're working with universities, and and whether or not that's something you might want to highlight internally. I'm going to speak this direction. You can come from the side, and maybe we meet in the middle. So many times when I've tried and failed to get to a senior level person in the company, I've gone through the grassroots. I've gone through the programmers or the engineers or the tech team, and I talk to them at their level, and I try and get them to buy in, and we try and work that way up. So it's not like I only get talking to you to get to your boss, but I'm trying to understand how to get to your boss, how to broaden the conversation, because ultimately this is how it will benefit you. So try going sideways rather than direct.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have a question? I know I have spoken a lot, longer than I should have done. Trini, you're very quiet.
Yeah, I actually start figuring out what's the buying journey because there are so many decision makers in one company,
Yeah.
and also and I don't like phone calls, so I don't know. Yeah, I mean it's really stressful, and also I felt kind of stale their time. So I'll hire someone to do that, or I don't know. It's really difficult for me.
The thing is, listen, founder-led sales is how most startups work, but there comes a point when you go, okay, it's not my core strength. I have other focuses and I need to bring someone in. The thing is, it only works if when you bring somebody in, you give them something to work with. So it's important that you map out that sales process. You map out why people buy from your company. You give them those foundational tools. And even maybe you join that person on the call, you open the conversation and they take over, because then you can do the sort of parallel sell where you have the deference to authority. They can refer to you on questions that they're not comfortable with. You can encourage them to speak, but you get to hear what's coming up in the conversation, and maybe you can educate the salesperson offline outside of the call and build up their knowledge that way. But yeah, focus on mapping out that sales process. Just think, if I wanted to sell this product or service, what has to happen? I have to get this person to say yes, and they have to do this, and then that has to happen, and then this has to happen. And what the idea is, we're trying to get that so it's clear, and then we look to see if we can shorten it, because we want that buying journey as short as possible, as pain-free as possible, so that when we do bring someone in, they have a very straightforward understanding of the landscape they're going to be selling into. So again, offline, if you want to have a conversation about that, more than happy to do that with you as well.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay. We've run over a little bit. I hope that's okay. If anybody has a question, please connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer. I'm just checking the messages, chat. Have I missed anything, everybody? Are we good?
And I have a quick photo.
Sorry.
a quick photo. Everyone smile.
Great. Right. Well, look, thank you very much, everybody. It's been my pleasure. I hope it's been of value. It's hard to condense all that information into a short space of time. And if you want to come back and have a specific area conversation, we can do that as well. But otherwise, I'll say thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
You
you so much.
Taran.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.